It's kind of like with birth. If you listen to people around you, you probably think that the newborn period is a traumatic time of screaming babies and nobody sleeping much. Babies are either colicky or they're teething or they're allergic to this or that, or they won't sleep at night. And it can sound pretty scary. But what if I told you that all of that is something that is very true to who they are and who they have always been? They are trying to adjust to something so very different than all they've ever known. So we need to try to help them work through that in the right way if we want to make their transition from inside to outside smooth and beautiful. So that's what we're going to talk about today. Let's go. Are you a Christian woman yearning for a beautiful, joyful pregnancy and birth with a focus on God, not medical tests? Are you worried the birth you want isn't possible and you're tired of being treated like an accident waiting to happen? Hey Mama, I'm Lori, host of Your Birth God's Way. I'm a certified nurse midwife now, but I wasn't always. After working for nearly 20 years in the broken maternity system, I too was in your shoes wondering how I could have the birth I wanted and that I felt God meant for me to have. I found a secret that has actually been known since the beginning of time. God's way is the best way. Spoiler alert, God made us and our babies, and He knows us best. He designed us perfectly for pregnancy, birth, and nourishing our babies after birth, if we work with His design and not against it. In this podcast, you'll learn how to be healthy and have joy during this time of life that will be over before you know it. So if you're ready to reclaim your birth and your babies for His glory, go turn on a few episodes of Bluey for that little one on your hip so you can put the focus back on you for a few minutes with me. Review time today comes from, I think it's A.T. Lundy. She left this back in April. The headline says, "Good for my clients. I'm a doula and childbirth educator outside of Atlanta. I have been listening every day for a couple of weeks and can't get enough. I've learned so much and now share episodes with my clients so they can feel empowered and make informed decisions. Thank you for having the boldness to speak up and speak out. It's so needed." Thank you. And now that I think about it, it's probably ATL Undy, maybe? I don't know, because you said you're from Atlanta. But anyway, screen names are weird, as you can tell. Every week I make some comment about them, so forgive me. But I just appreciate so much those of you who take the time to leave me a review. It lights me up, it encourages me, and it helps me find other mamas just like you. So if you haven't left me a review, you know what to do. Hit pause, go over there, leave me a 5-star written review real quick, and brighten my day. And you might just hear your review read right here in a future podcast. All right, so let's get talking about our topic for the day, which is helping your baby transition from the inside of your womb to life on the outside, out in the real world. Okay? Not the real world. Inside is still the real world, but you know what I mean. Your baby has only ever known you for its whole existence. From the time of conception up until the time of birth, all it's ever known is you. Their first consciousness is the warmth of your womb. We don't know when a baby's consciousness starts, but we do know that all it knows is inside of you, and that it does have consciousness before birth. So it's in there thinking about what's going on. It's thinking about where it's at and what's happening in whatever way a baby can think at that point. But that's all that baby has ever known. The baby knows warmth, knows muffled sounds, sounds that are coming through skin and muscle and fat tissue, and then also fluid, the fluid of the amniotic fluid. That's how they've heard your voice, is that muffled sound. It's not loud, it's not abrasive, it's very smooth and calming. They've known the steady beat of your heart and all of the peace and the calm and the warmth that your womb brings. That's all they've ever known. Birth is much anticipated for you, but not for your baby. Your baby doesn't really know it's coming, right? Your baby's just hanging out one day. They're doing whatever it is the baby's doing there, moving around, wiggling, stretching, practicing breathing, maybe sucking a thumb, sucking a finger. And then all of a sudden, this squeezing starts every 2 or 3 minutes. and they're getting mashed and squeezed and pushed down. And then before you know it, they're inside of your pelvis and their head's getting pushed around and they're kind of getting cramped. And it's a lot for a baby. They've gone through from a peaceful existence to all of a sudden somebody's trying to get them out of here, right? So then when birth happens, they come out into this cold world where it's dry and it's loud. Even if it's a quiet environment, it's still louder than what they're used to because everything's been muffled up until now. It's dry. There's no more amniotic fluid around them. It's just totally different. And then if you're in a hospital, it's even more. There are crazy bright lights. They're in your eyes, so obviously in the baby's eyes too. There's rough towels rubbing the baby's body, hats being put on their head, and maybe even needles going in their leg. And that's best case scenario because if there's even the slightest little thing wrong, they're going to be swept away to a warmer, maybe even to a room down the hall with people they don't know, voices they don't recognize all around them, needles, cold stickers on them, tubes, any number of other things. Maybe getting a rubber nipple shoved in their mouth with formula or sugar water or something like that. And that's just a small picture. It can be worse. Of course, it can be better too if it's at home and calm and peaceful. But no matter where it is quite the change for a baby. So why is it a surprise that babies don't act just like we think they should? They don't fall in line and just automatically start acting well-behaved, like well-behaved little babies, right? We're thinking from our adult human brains with our adult expectations of what normal is. But nothing about what is normal or needed for us as adults is what is normal and needed for a baby who has just been born. I see moms putting their babies in beds alone and they wonder why they won't sleep well. I see moms frustrated that they can't lay their babies down without their babies waking up and crying. I see moms irritated when their babies start teething and they can't soothe them, so nobody's getting any sleep. I see moms exhausted because they are up and down the hall all night to their babies to feed them, and then they can't go back to sleep because they got up and got their brains all stimulated. So when they lay back down, they're wide awake. I see moms struggling with postpartum depression because they are terrified of making mistakes. And they are chasing some ideal that is impossible to obtain, trying to do way too much, and most of what they're trying to do is actually ill-advised. And yet, all the things that are causing all the frustration are actually because we are doing what we think we, quote, should do, and what the culture says we should do. But none of it is actually what our babies need. Believe it or not, I was well rested, probably the best rested that I have been as a mom during the newborn period for all of my babies. Yeah, you heard that right. I was the best rested during the newborn phase. The more babies I raised, the more I realized that the recommendations most moms follow is terrible advice. Terrible advice. And they're actually causing the problems that moms are suffering with. So today, I want to help you see the ways that you can help your baby have a beautiful, smooth transition, which will then help you have a beautiful and smooth transition into motherhood. We're going to go over several ways, things that you can do either before birth or after birth that will change your newborn motherhood. Okay? First one is not going to be a surprise, okay? Because this is all, by the way, going back to doing things God's way. God never tells us to separate ourselves from our babies. God never tells us to go to a hospital where we give away all control to people that aren't our family or aren't our God. This is all taking us away from His will for us in how we care for our babies. So you won't be surprised when I tell you that my first tip for helping this transition be smooth is to labor naturally. And you may think, whoa, we're talking about newborns. We're talking about the baby phase. We're not talking about labor, but it all is connected. Because see, when you labor naturally, it allows you to work with the natural rhythms of labor, which puts you in tune with your baby and allows that delicate hormonal symphony to progress in the best way. It also keeps harmful medications out of your baby's system, which can impact how they're feeling and how they adjust, and it can impact their nursing and how they latch. When you labor naturally and let your body do the things that God designed your body to do in the timing that God says it needs to happen, your baby can have a much gentler transition. It's not being forced. It's not being made to be too strong and too fast. And it is not altering the way that they think or the way that they respond with medications or any number of other things. So that's the first one. And the second one also will be no surprise. You need to nurse your baby and not plan on formula feeding. And if you're trying to do God's way, do things God's way, I know that you're already planning on doing that. But you got to understand that your body makes the exact milk with the exact nutrient and calorie makeup that your body needs, with the exact quality of calories, meaning the right split of protein and fat and carbs, exactly what your baby needs, if you do it exclusively and let the baby nurse on demand. That means you don't put the baby on a schedule and say, oh, it's not time to feed yet. You say, baby's showing hunger cues. Baby is showing me that it's time to nurse. I'm going to let this baby nurse right now. I don't care that I just nursed 30 minutes ago. We're going to nurse again right now, because your baby is trying to tell your body, if it just nursed and needs to nurse again, it's telling your body something. It's saying, hey, I need more milk, or I need more comfort, or whatever it is. That is a feedback system that this baby is trying to tell your body something by the way it's nursing. And when you block that, you're blocking something the baby needs you to know, okay? And when you work with it, you allow that baby to have security and safety in knowing that when I need something, mama's going to respond. Mama's body's going to give me what I need. See, the world has scared you into thinking that there's a really good chance that nursing isn't going to work. But just like with labor, if you work with God's design in labor and then also after birth, there's a very, very good chance it's going to work fine. If you birth in the hospital, you must advocate for this. Don't let them take your baby right after birth to weigh them or clean them or measure them or really anything short of life-saving measures. Side note, even those can be done with the placenta intact with the baby on the bed if you have a properly skilled clinician, but that's a totally different topic. Baby doesn't have to be swept away just if it's having a little trouble transitioning. But for the first several hours after birth, none of those things, the weighing, the bathing, all that stuff, it can all wait. Now, they don't want it to wait. They're not going to like it that you advocate for this. Oh, well. They won't be there in the next few weeks when you're struggling to get that baby to latch, or you're struggling with supply issues because you let go of that golden, really several hours after birth when they needed to be on your skin, nursing and nursing and nursing. If you give up that time so that the staff can do whatever it is that the staff needs to do, whatever charting or testing or measuring or whatever they need to do, if you give that up to them so they can do what they need to do, you're going to end up paying for it later. So I'm begging you, mama, advocate for that. Don't let them have your baby in those first couple of hours. You need that baby on you. You need to be nursing, and you need to just be snuggling and having that skin-to-skin time, because that sets the path for you to have successful breastfeeding. Don't let those first few hours be sabotaged. I want you to see that this can work, okay? And I want you to see how easily it can work. So what I need you to do when this podcast is over, listen to the whole thing, but when this podcast is over, I want you to go over to YouTube and I want you to type in breast crawl. C-R-A-W-L, like a baby crawls, breast crawl. I want you to type that in, and I want you to go find a few of the videos. There's one video in particular, and I should have wrote down what the exact title is, but it's a video from somewhere in India or something like that, and it's one of the coolest videos. Watching this baby find its way from the mom's belly up to the breast all by itself with nobody moving it. See, your babies, they can figure this out. God made them to find their way to your breast. You don't have to force it. You don't have to mash them into your boob. You don't have to do any of that stuff that the world has told you that you need to do. If you want to learn more about this, by the way, we go deep into breastfeeding in my course, and we watch the videos about the breast crawl, and we talk about it, and we talk about latch, and we talk about all the different types of holds, all this different stuff. So if you need help with that, that is part of the course. I want you to know that resource is available for you. You don't necessarily need complicated instructions or complicated techniques or complicated holds, though. You just need to allow your baby to use his or her God-given instinct to do the things naturally that it was made to do without being forced. Okay, the world has sold us a lie in this category, just like it has in most categories. Stop believing it. Believe that your baby can nurse, and when you nurse, you're going to help that baby have a better transition to life on the outside. Next tip, spend the baby's first hours or even days of life with him or her directly on your skin most of the hours of the day. I know sometimes you got to pee, sometimes you got to eat. I understand that, but I'm saying, maybe 90% of your waking hours, have that baby on your chest, because this is piggybacking off the last point. Skin to skin is one of the best ways for your system and your baby system to be well regulated. When I say skin to skin, I mean the baby's skin directly against your skin, usually belly to belly. Obviously, baby can have a diaper on if you want that, but otherwise, no clothes, them directly on your skin, and then you can put a blanket or something around to snuggle to keep them from getting cold. Do that as much as possible during the first weeks of life. It helps the baby regulate their temperature. It helps their breathing be regulated. It helps their heart rate be regulated. And who knows what else is being regulated that we don't even recognize yet. It also makes for easier nursing because the baby's right there and can find their way to the breast when they're ready. It helps them to smell you to smell them. It helps the baby's microbiome to further develop by being against your skin. It helps your body to sense what they need. Believe it or not, when you're doing things like kissing the baby's head and smelling the baby's head, your body is getting signals from that, and it's changing the way that it's making the milk and the content of the milk based on what that baby needs. And when you have the baby right up against you, that's one of the best ways to help that to happen well. It also makes good sleeping for you both, because you can just doze off together and sleep well throughout those first few weeks when everybody needs sleep. Baby needs sleep and you need sleep. You need rest, which again brings me to the next point. Have you been looking for a course online to help you prepare for your natural birth, but you're sick of having to weed through the content to take out all that new agey stuff or the flat out ungodly advice? Well, I've got some great news for you. There is now a course that will teach you everything you need to know to be fully prepared for birth, postpartum, and breastfeeding from a Christian perspective on demand, taught by a midwife with over 20 years of experience in the maternity world. And that midwife is me. After many years of being indoctrinated into that godless, medicalized maternity world, I woke up to the truth and realized that most of the maternity system in our country is based on lies. I became a doula and then a midwife, and now I help moms like you have a God-led, God-filled birth from an informed position so that you do not have to be led by fear, but rather by faith in God and knowledge of the truth. Inside this course, you will be engulfed in Scripture while learning about God's ways of nutrition, prenatal care, birth, postpartum care, breastfeeding, what dad needs to know, and so much more. In addition to the course content itself, which is available in both video and audio formats, you'll get workbooks for each module so you can take notes on what you want to remember, Christian relaxation audio tracks to use during pregnancy and labor, printable affirmation cards, and the best part, you'll get access to a live question and answer session with me each month to ask your questions. To sign up or learn more, head over to go.yourbirthgodsway.com/course. That's go.yourbirthgodsway.com/course. Now, this is a serious course, and it's only for serious mamas who truly want to have their birth God's way. So if that's you, head over to go.yourbirthgodsway.com/course today, and I'll see you in the course. Make arrangements to safely co-sleep. Yes, I said co-sleep. I said to do the thing that all of, quote, them tell you shouldn't do. But help me understand what is natural about laying your baby in a cold bed down the hall from you where you can't protect it. You can't hear it. You can't know how it's doing. You can't use your senses to detect when something might be wrong. Yeah, you can put a camera on them. You can put a monitor in there, but it's never going to substitute you being with your baby. It is not natural for your baby to sleep alone. Do you hear me? It is not natural for your baby to sleep alone. Your baby has never been alone. Never. So why would we want our babies to be independent as newborns? Why would we expect that? It's not natural for a baby to sleep on its back. Did you know that? Have you ever noticed that? Babies that have been maybe in the nursery or NICU for a while, they put them to sleep on their bellies because they're on monitors and they think it's safe that way. And then they send them home and then expect them to be able to sleep on their backs. It's not natural. Do you always sleep the same way all night, every night? Do you always sleep on your back? Of course you don't. Most people don't. If you do, you're a very rare person. Sometimes on your back, yeah, but not all the time. See, the good old government told us that we should put our babies on their backs to sleep. And sleeping on their back is fine. But see, they've convinced you that the cause, essentially the cause of SIDS, is babies not sleeping on their back, and that's the way to fix it. What they don't tell you is how many kids are now having to have their heads put in helmets to make them round again because they've been put on their back for hours and hours and hours. I mean, newborns are sleeping, 21 hours a day? 21 hours a day on their soft heads, because babies' heads are soft. That's how they fit through your pelvis. So they're laying on their backs all day long, and their heads are turning flat. They're also getting bald spots on their heads because they're laying in the same position over and over. As they turn their head around right to left, they're wearing the hair off of their head. So you're having all these issues, and meanwhile, you're not preventing SIDS. This isn't what causes SIDS, y'all. Something else does. Maybe more than one something else. Maybe it comes in the form of things that we talked about back in episode 87 because their brains are being inundated with metals, heavy metals. But I digress. That's not the topic here. Understand that while laying a baby on their back to sleep is reasonable, it's not the only way. There are ways that you can sleep with your baby safely. So let's talk about how to make sleeping with your baby safe. First, no smoking and no alcohol. If you smoke at all, or if you have any alcohol in your system, this is not safe for you to do. I hope you're not smoking. I hope you're not drinking. And if you are, I hope you will stop because I don't want you to miss out on the beauty of having your baby sleeping with you if that's something that you would like to do. When you're laying in the bed, you always want to have baby at your breast, not behind you, not on the other side of the bed, but right up next to you, belly to belly with you, or on their back if they roll to their back when they fall asleep. They need to be dressed in something like a sleep sack or something like that where they can be covered up, but not have to have covers up over their faces. Obviously, that's not safe to have blankets over their faces. Your mattress needs to be relatively firm, not real squishy to where their face could get occluded in it. There needs to be no cords or gaps where the baby can get stuck. And if you choose to use like a CoSleeper bed, that can be okay. But honestly, for a lot of people, they just end up being a changing table. For me, that's what ended up happening. Babies didn't ever want to sleep in there. They wanted to be right up next to me, which is normal and it's natural and it's a good thing. And if it turns out that ends up just being your changing table, it's actually really nice because then you don't have to get up to change the baby. You can do it right there and you don't have to be up and down the hall getting yourself wide awake to where you can't go back to sleep. It also straps on, like the one we used strapped onto the opposite side of the bed, held it against the bed really tight. So it was a nice barrier to keep the baby from falling off the bed. So it was actually nice to have even though we didn't use it as a CoSleeper. I will put a link down in the show notes of a bed close to what we used. I don't think the bed that I actually used exists anymore or is made anymore. I guess it exists in some people's houses, but I don't think it's made anymore. But I will put one down there that's pretty close so that you can kind of see the idea of what a CoSleeper looks like. And again, I really enjoyed having it there as a changing table. All right, next thing, baby wearing. I'm sure you've heard of this by now. It's pretty popular these days. There's all kinds of different baby carriers that you can choose from. This particular point really combines the last several points into the idea that the baby is snug, the baby is cozy, and feels safe up against your body. And it also gives you the ability to get a few things done. They say sleep when the baby sleeps, but do you do laundry when the baby does laundry? Of course not. You can't do that, right? Sometimes there's a few things that actually do need to happen. Hopefully not until the baby's 2 or 3 weeks old. Hopefully you are really, really resting those first couple of weeks. But later on, you still got to, eat and do things around the house. So having the baby strapped to you can make that possible. There's lots and lots and lots of different kinds of carriers you can try out. I put links to my 2 favorite types down in the notes. It's not the exact ones because, again, most of the exact things that I use have changed a little bit because it's been a while since I've had brand new babies. I used the boba wrap. The boba wrap it's a fabric type of wrap that you wrap around yourself several times. You can find videos on YouTube that'll show you how to do that. It's not as complicated as it seems. That's what I preferred to use the most when my babies were newborns, brand new, wanting to sleep all the time. Later on, as they got a little bit more active and were wanting to look around a little bit more, I preferred the backpack type. And it's just a different style. It's just a different way to do the same thing. It just kind of depends on what's easiest for you to handle. I will say that one thing you need to be aware of when you're using these baby carriers is you need to make sure that your baby has frog legs. That means that the baby's knees are up and bent. Their knees need to be above the hips because if you let the baby's legs dangle, it can cause something called hip dysplasia. You see it all the time when you go to the store. You see babies with their legs dangling. That is not good. They need to be up and they need to be flexed, bent, so that you don't have the problem of that extra weight pulling down on that hip joint, causing problems in how their legs are developing. Another little tip on this one, baby wearing is how I kept hands off my babies when they were brand new at church. Because these sweet folks who loved us so much, we were the only family still having babies. Everybody else was much older. And they loved us and they wanted to be loving on our babies, but we had all of our babies either in flu season or getting real close to flu season. And so having the baby in the carrier kept them from touching them so much. I hope that doesn't sound hateful. That's not what I mean by it. But in those first few weeks, you don't want to be introducing any kind of sickness to your baby. And so having them up against you, they just don't want to reach quite right into your personal space like that. They'll kind of peek, but they won't reach in and touch the same way as they will if you have them in a baby carrier, like a car seat type of carrier. So it's just a little tip to keep extra hands off your baby during the cold and flu season, or really any other season, because newborns need a chance for their immune systems to get established before everybody starts touching them. All right, last thing I mentioned in the introduction, teething. Okay, teething isn't a thing you're dealing with right in the very first part of the newborn period, but believe it or not, you'll start seeing signs of it right around 3 months or so. Okay, let me tell you, you may think I'm crazy if you're new to this crunchy world that we're in. Teething necklaces work. Okay, they just do. I need you to believe me that they just do. Everybody looks at me crazy. They do. I actually at first thought they didn't. I put a necklace on my son AJ right around 3 months when he started drooling all over the place. Left it on him, I don't know, a couple years maybe longer than that, 24 hours a day, and never had the first teething issue. But AJ was a really good, really easy baby. Then comes Ruby. Love Ruby. Ruby is precious, but Ruby was not an easy baby. Ruby was the one that would scream for the sake of screaming. You've checked everything, you know nothing's wrong, and she's still hollering. It's just who she was. So she was more of a reactive child, and yet we had no teething issues with her. If there was ever a child that we were going to have teething issues with, it would have been her. But I remember one time brushing her teeth and looking back there, and she had cut 4 molars, and I never knew it in how she acted. So at that point, I was a believer. No, it's not just that they're good babies. It really works. So I had 3 babies. They all 3 wore teething necklaces from about 3 months on, and I never had even one teething issue. Very little drooling, no fevers, no crying, no diarrhea, none of the sickness, none of that stuff. It was just normal life. You can doubt me if you want, and then you can enjoy your teething season. But I'm telling you, this is a cheap, easy way to deal with something that happens to every single baby. You get one small enough that it won't go up over their chin, so it stops before it gets to where they can chew on it. They don't chew on it. Actually, the way that it works is it's made of amber, which is petrified tree resin, which releases a natural anti-inflammatory through the skin and helps them to deal with the inflammation that comes with teething. That's how it works. So you put it on them early before you really think you need it. You leave it on them 24 hours a day. Now, obviously, you got to ensure there's nothing in the bed that they could get hung on, but I don't know anybody who has a baby crib or co-sleeps with things in their bed that a baby could get hung on. I've never seen it. Maybe it exists. If you have things in your bed that your baby could get hung on, get rid of those if you're going to leave it on your baby 24 hours a day. Now, the thing about amber teething necklaces is there's a lot of knockoffs out there now because it's the cool thing. It's the hip thing. It's the in thing. And so a lot of people are putting things out there that are just basically beads. It's not the real deal. So I've got a link again down in the show notes of the brand that we use that I can guarantee you is the real deal. And you also have a code down there you can use that'll give you 15% off. So go check that out. It's a small company. The website is not fancier and impressive, but these people are the real deal. The stuff they sell is the real deal, and it works. I would recommend getting the kind that's raw, that's not polished, just because you get a little bit higher level of the natural anti-inflammatory coming from that when it's not been polished and made shiny. But if you want to get the pretty shiny ones, that's still better than nothing. Or maybe get one that's raw to wear most of the time and get your pretty shiny ones for your little girls, maybe for Sunday mornings. It's your call. So this whole episode, it all goes back to the maternal intuition that God gave you. He gave you good sense to know what to do. And if you're honest with yourself, you know that a lot of the advice that you've gotten just doesn't sit right. And you know it doesn't seem like it would be best for your baby, but you've probably been conditioned to just yield to the, quote, expertise of these alphabet agencies so that you ignore your gut. You've yielded to them and ignored your gut to go with these experts, so-called experts. But I want you to stop it. Your baby wants to be with you. You know your baby better than anybody else. We went through that a lot in the last episode. You know your baby better than anybody else. Your baby wants your milk. Your baby does not want to be alone or independent. This is not the time to build independence. In fact, the more time you spend with your baby close together, the more independent they will be later when it's appropriate. Your baby is a baby. Everything is new, and it's hard for your baby to get used to it all. It's a lot to adjust to. Everything they deal with is brand new. They need to know that you are there. And the way that you can make the transition to this new world of theirs the smoothest is by being there with them every step of the way. And that may seem exhausting, but I promise it's not as exhausting when you've had a good night's sleep because maybe you chose to co-sleep instead of putting your baby on their back in a cold crib down the hall that you end up having to go up and down the hall 12 times a night to. Promise you that you can deal with all the needs of your baby a whole lot better when you've had a good night's sleep. You are all your baby has ever known. You are your baby's safety and security. So don't give that up. Be there for your baby. Give your baby the attention and the contact that they need to make this transition into this new world and help them to have a smooth transition. I keep using that word, but that's really what it is. Help them to have a smooth, beautiful transition as they come out from inside of you into this world. that's one of the best things you can do. That's going to be the way to have the most peaceful the most peaceful motherhood in your first several years of being a mom. And I hope this has helped you. I hope this has blessed you. I hope this has given you some ideas of things that you can do to make those first weeks and months easier and more beautiful. And I will see you right back here with a new episode for you next week. Real quick, if today's episode blessed you in any way, would you head over to Apple Podcasts and leave me a quick 5-star written review? It'll take you less than a minute, but it's the best thank you can give me. And it will help my show to reach more mamas just like you, so we can all find God's best for our families. I'll see you right back here in a few days.